America once tested an engine for a missile powered by a nuclear reactor. The idea was a weapon that could fly for days without refueling, and its exhaust could turn the sky itself into fallout. Project Pluto was terrifying because the engine was part of the weapon. The missile never deployed. But the nuclear ramjet test was real. This is the Cold War project that made even nuclear planners step back. In the 1950s, military planners feared that ordinary bombers might not survive future defenses. They wanted range, speed, low altitude, and endurance beyond anything conventional. The answer was radical: replace fuel with a reactor. At a high level, air would be heated by the reactor and forced out as thrust. The delivery concept was known as SLAM, a supersonic low-altitude missile. It was imagined flying low enough to evade radar and loud enough to become a weapon by itself. The work centered at Lawrence Livermore, inside America's nuclear weapons complex. The experimental nuclear ramjet reactors were called Tory. To test it, engineers went to the desert, far from cities and ordinary airfields. Because a ramjet needs rushing air, the test facility had to simulate extreme flight conditions. The test proved the concept could produce thrust without chemical fuel. That was the nightmare. It was not pure fiction. A flying reactor could not carry heavy shielding like a stationary plant. The air passing through the reactor could leave a radioactive wake behind it. At low altitude, even the sound could become destructive. The planned missile was also meant to carry nuclear weapons, but the reactor made it uniquely grotesque. Its endurance meant it could keep flying long after a normal weapon would be gone. Pluto blurred the line between delivery system and environmental weapon. Cold War logic rewarded anything that promised survivability after a first strike. Deterrence had entered a phase where horror itself became a design feature. The engineering challenge was extraordinary. The ethical challenge was worse. They could test the A engine on the ground. Flying it was another problem entirely. The obvious question became impossible. Where do you safely test a flying nuclear reactor? Even over remote ocean, the problem did not disappear. The reactor would still come down somewhere. By the early 1960s, other missile technologies were becoming faster, cleaner, and more practical. Ballistic missiles offered nuclear reach without a reactor screaming through the atmosphere. The weapon was not just dangerous to enemies, it was dangerous to the world around it. In 1964, Project Pluto was canceled. But the engine left behind a warning about what Cold War urgency could normalize. Project Pluto sounds fictional because the real facts are already extreme. In Pluto, propulsion itself carried the project's deepest danger. The atmosphere itself became part of the battlefield. The documents were full of performance, range, and survivability. The human cost sat in the shadows. It disturbs us because it nearly made environmental ruin part of strategic design. Project Pluto stayed on the ground. But a canceled plan is not the same thing as a harmless idea. The archive lesson is simple. Not every impossible weapon should be made possible. Was Project Pluto the most insane Cold War weapon ever seriously tested? Inside the Dark History archive, the strangest files are often the ones that never left the drawing board.